Wow, okay. All right, you got it.
So real quick, Peg, your question was spot on. That's exactly what we're expecting from teams as they evolve from implement, logic or remedy AR logic to this. So in other words, real-time proof that an SME actually verified the change, and it's not just a proxy, it's someone who actually executed the verification. So.
Okay, one itty-bitty question. Steve kept updating our work detail. And I know you were giving us examples of what kind of work detail labels were in there, yada, yada, but I got this impression that every time I'm doing something on this ticket, I'm supposed to do a work detail update.
You got it. That's exactly correct. Every time something happens related to this, you record it and timestamp it. And I was just using general information.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
but we're supposed to use one of these.
Well, if there are certain
they work.
If there's certain things like, it's like, here I want to record some potential problems that came out of a meeting, I would select that, But the general information is just the catch-all type of thing. But you're absolutely correct. The intent of the work detail log is I want a log of everything that went on from the time this was open until the time this thing was actually closed.
So it's much larger than the basic install instructions and backout and testing plan. Okay.
You start going through the workflow, that's when you're making constant updates.
Okay.
Right. And for instance, like the technical review board, something that drives me nuts is a lot of times you sit on those meetings and someone says, I have issues with A, B, and C, and they start sending out emails and this and that instead of documenting the question in the ticket.
Right.
Optimally, the question would be, hey, this is a yeah, so we have a chain collision with X, Y, and Z. This is the reason where, I expect
huge on this in terms of incidents, but we're also going to be in terms of change. Like, for example, when we do an incident, we now have how we do it when you have to do a post-mortem, you have to give the blow-by-blow. Here's your blow-by-blow. Boom, boom, boom,
right.
Boom. This is what happens. Or if something fails, a change goes awry, what's the background on this change? Bam, it's right there in front of you in the ticket.
Wow.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It's
or something that prevents any given change from going in smoothly. Let's say it takes 6 hours instead of the 3 hours that were allotted. During the PIR, you would assess this situation. So you have a post-implementation review, which occurs, let's say, the Monday after standard installs, and you'd say, okay, this should be done in order to prevent this in the future, and again, it would be documented as a work detail.
right.
If I wanted to do this, like I'm creating the ticket, create relationship to configuration item.
Oh, look at that.
And it would come up, and I'd have a list of the names. Let's call it SESNet, because I know it's in there. There's some SESNet. The SESNet QA, SESNet prod, SESNet prod.
And that's where we're thinking.
You're right. So now it's saying,
This seemed like a good place.
SESNet prod. I can look at its impacted areas. I can look at the relationships. Here's all the servers that go with SESNet prod.
So this is an
when you create that relationship, that's exactly what you put in. So, so you say, this is the team who owns it. This is how critical it is if it ever goes down, and all that kind of thing. So no more. Once we get full-blown CMDB, that whole minutia that we have to go through to understand who's impacted, who owns it, that completely goes away. It even tells you which clients use the service.
And that's so important.
Yeah. Design the CMDB correctly. Just don't throw a bunch of assets, unrelated assets in there. You have to relate all these different things. So
and it has
it's a non-gloss production Accenture environment made up of all of these physical and logical components. They also have these clients on it. These are the people who own it. All of that goes into the CMDB. And so I can query it and say, oh, this environment went down. What clients are impacted? Boom. Click of the button. Who owns it? Click of the button. Boom, 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 boom.
one.
The nice thing about the CMDB too is if a certain release requires a recycle of the application or the box, the JVM, the cool thing is that again you can understand that if there is in fact a scheduled request or a standard request to recycle a box, it might coincide with the change request for a recycle, and so obviously you'd want the two to coincide. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Sheena had asked was you have a bunch of different types of CMDB records based, it's far more than we would ever use, and it asks you different information. If you're a server, it'll ask you for certain information. If you're an application, it'll ask you.
Right.
So you have the ability when we create this to actually do true configuration management. On this particular box, I'm running this version of BLOS against this service pack, against this build, etc., etc., etc. And it captures all that information right here.
That's all captured.
There's a single archive for everything.
That's awesome.
Into one of two things. The system has a full-blown TCO, total cost of ownership. So if Mark Schlesinger was curious about what it costs to do incidents, what does it cost to do change, this is how we would set it up. It also has the ability, if we ever wanted to charge back to a business unit, we calculate, what it costs us to actually do this change, and then do a charge back, or you can just keep it internally. That way you know what your burn rates are against your volume change.
Oh, that's interesting.
What you would do is, like, for X change, if you're going to have an engineer, you probably have some kind of rate structure. It would be a standard rate structure. And then when the person is done, the delta between actual start, actual end goes into the system, calculates a cost factor for that particular change. At the end of the month, you can say, this is the cost. This is what it costs us to do everything. This is what it costs to do ICS. This is what it costs us to do SPS. This is what it costs us to do infrastructure only SPS. Blah blah blah. It's separated 8 million ways. Now, gotten into the software release management module, which I have in mind.
Okay.
So there's a whole module here for development teams to manage their lines of code.
Exciting is that you don't just have to designate an implementation as being specific to a certain group. So in other words, if SSA per hour that's required for the implementation, but you spend this many units of work relating directly to a certain expense. You can see, for instance, after a 6-hour period that SSA spends this much of their resources every month in order to implement changes. So,
right.
Based again.
So Kevin's point, one particular area, especially when you get into next, apply a higher cost factor on it. in that way, not only just to understand cost of ownership, but it's cost of performing work, but it also is going to drive, drive resource allocation right down to the group level. You do it
That's
right.
amazing.
How easy it was to create a CI, so I related it to FedNet. Now let's say at the end of the change, I have to record my unavailability. So boom, I click a button. I literally click a button. This is the SOP. So what's my class of unavailability? This is a change. Unavailability type, it is a scheduled full. My unavailability status is that it's restored. I'll come over here. What it was, and you don't have to give the schedule, but you're going to give your actual.
Right.
So if I say, I did it here, then it finished it 2 hours later, right? You don't. I'm not going to do it right now, because then what it'll end up doing is clearing all. It'll actually record this, and it'll tell me that I had planned unavailability for FedNet on this date, and then it'll keep just adding it up for me.
And it's stored.
Archive.
I'm looking for.
We've been intelligent users or proactive users jump on the bandwagon. Your thoughts and questions is a very exciting thing.
Thanks. I guess Donna won't log.
I got you here.
Yeah.
Show you.
As long as I'm not screwed.
Cache change, just different functions.
Oh, okay.
Predefined that people require notification on, just click broadcast change, bam, it goes out. There's an impact simulator that goes hand in hand with a CMDB. This truly is a simulation. So if I have a change, in this particular case, I did a relationship to FedNet, and I could even do the relationship to a given server on FedNet. But let's say I'm doing a deployment to FedNet. If I click on Impact Simulator, the system's going to go out and query any other change that's active in the system, scheduled within that same window against the same CI. And it'll come back and say, hey, someone else is trying to do a change on your environment at the same time you are. You have a change collision. So it'll actually do simulations up and down the food chain and tell you when you have collisions.
We have meetings in today's world for that.
That it's going to evolve into a calendar of events. So in other words, anything that is defined as high risk, in fact, populates a change calendar. And, for instance, if you're worried about the implementation schedules for Memorial Day weekend because you're going to be at the beach or for whatever reason, you look at it and you say, okay, this looks like a healthy load, or you say that, the fact that we have 26 high-impact changes scheduled for Memorial Day weekend is probably a bad idea, that type of deal.
Found. So it actually would outsearch the system and says, oh, I'm okay to proceed. So that's the kind of things we teach people to do at creation time.
Good idea. Good idea.
In the system, so I just brought up the calendar. Every time somebody puts an entry in, it goes into the ITSM calendar.
Look at that.
Knows there's something scheduled in that time frame against the CI that I selected. So everything works in conjunction with everything else.
Well,
exactly.
If we
the ability to create manual business events, and you can block people out. You can block people out enterprise-wide. I could block a given product out. You could take it down to the nth level to block people out, and the systems would say, blackout day.
Yeah.
Pick another scheduled time.
In this case, it will okay, you know, we don't want to prevent client investors.
But, you know, let's do an EMER and get a VP approval, you know.
Exactly.
Wow.